Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Good morning, hello, and welcome to the latest episode. It is actually, for the first time ever, Saturday rather than Friday, and I'll explain why in a second. So it is Saturday, I think the 22nd of August 2025, and you are joining me on the plot this morning. I'm going to go and let the birds out. We're going to let the birds out together. So let's let the first little group out. See if you can hear these guys. Come on, babies. There we go. So that's Shirley and Kermie and Miss Piggy. They've just come out to have their breakfast. These guys grow so fast, it's unbelievable. I mean, considering they get made in 3 weeks, that is also a miracle in the egg. And then once they come out, they're literally off like little rockets. So very hungry little babies this morning. And I shall go over and do the ducks. Now, Dolores, my little baby call duck, well, she's not a baby, but she is kind of a baby because she's so small. She is doing okay. So she's not 100% yet, but the long-acting shot seems to have done the job. So there's definitely less wheezing and she is breathing better. So if you missed one of the previous episodes when I was talking about it, or perhaps you're a completely new listener and you've just jumped in at this point, well, welcome, first of all. But Dolores had pneumonia, which is very random. Everybody else is fine. Anyway, took her to the vet on Tuesday. She's had a long-acting shot, and she's just been staying with me while we try and get her better, bless her. So she is doing so much better, which is great. And then the vet invoiced me the bill, which is £50. And for that, I could have bought a trio of brand new ducks. But it can't be helped. It's money well spent, and she's part of the family, so had to do that. So I'm just gonna, the ducks are out, coming out. Morning. Morning, everybody. There we go. So the chickens are actually molting at the moment. I feel very sorry for them. Goose is very unhappy about it. She's sort of turned into a pin cushion, and I try not to hold them at this time of year because they shed all their feathers over a period of a month or so, and then they have these new feathers poking out. And poor Goose, she's got them poking out from every part of her body, which is great that she's having a really good molt, but I do feel for her because it must be really, really uncomfortable. So we've got 2 eggs in the duck house. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies. That's wonderful. They do slow down on the egg laying when they're having their molts. And in fact, the chickens have pretty much stopped, but the ducks are a little bit more robust. So that is that. So the reason I'm recording on Saturday rather than Friday is that my other half and I are babysitting one of his grandchildren this weekend. We decided yesterday that we would go to Cotswold Wildlife Park in the Cotswolds, and that means that I have to do all my work, all my clients today. So today is going to be quite a full-on day. There's quite a lot to get through, as well as obviously doing this podcast. And my car's gone to the garage to have some new tyres. And yeah, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on the plot as well, which I'll talk about in a second once I've got all these little birdies outside and doing what they're supposed to be doing today. So yeah, yesterday was full on. So shout out to all the mums and dads out there with 6-year-olds. It's a lot. And by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I couldn't even think straight. So I don't know how you guys do it all day long. 365 days a year, it's a lot. I mean, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, don't get me wrong, I love it. It's so much fun. In fact, it was my idea to do it. And I don't have any children of my own. So little one called me mummy yesterday by accident. And I have to say, my heart just like burst into a million pieces, because when you know that you're never going to be called mummy and somebody does it by accident, you're like, oh my goodness, that feels so amazing. Anyway, he had a lovely time yesterday, but I think I was more excited about seeing the animals than he was, to be honest. So, right, let's get these chickens out. It's been a funny old week, actually, because we still haven't had any rain. Everything is unbelievably parched and dry. Not on the plot, but my garden's gone a bit crispy. And my florist hasn't had a wedding for a couple of weeks. So I've kind of taken my foot off the pedal and thought, oh, I'll just have a little break for a while, which is actually fatal, really, because once you take your foot off the pedal, it's quite hard to get it back on the pedal. Morning, kids. Come on, everybody. Quick, quick. There we go. And Momo, this way. Mo. It's quite tricky. And also, I probably haven't been as on top with the deadheading as I was before. And I do work best under pressure. So go on, Mo, go and get your breakfast. So I kind of need to get my brain back in gear for everything now, because I've got some flowers to do for a funeral arrangement this week. And then I've got the flower festival this coming Friday, where I'm supplying quite a few stems to that. And I need to make sure, obviously, they're all in top quality condition. And then also looking at the forecast, we're due quite a lot of rain towards the end of this week. So I need to make a plan in my head for how I look after all the flowers. I mean, it's great. On the one hand, they're going to get loads of water, which is amazing. But on the other hand, I need to make sure that they are dry before they are collected for the flower festival, because the florists are not going to want to work with wet flowers, and obviously it will impact how they look and how they last and how they behave. So I need to put my thinking cap on for that. I mean, I can put umbrellas and parasols and things up over the dahlias, assuming it's not too windy. I know Richard Bailey, my dahlia mentor, does this. He gets a road pin or a stake or something, puts it in the ground, and then he cable ties an umbrella to it and puts the umbrella over the flowers that he wants to have for the shows. But I've got so many dahlias that I can't cover the whole lot, I don't think. So I need to go away and have a think about that. But there's an awful lot going on in the plot at the moment. And in the blink of an eye, half of the dahlias are flowering like mad. And they're not all, I don't have a market for all of them yet. So yeah, it's quite a lot to do this week. It's quite a lot to do today, to be honest. And I'm just going to pause for a second, because I've done all of that with the chickens, and have a look at my notes and see what I was actually going to talk to you about today. So I'll be right back. Hello, I am back. So in that interlude, which turned out to be longer than I was expecting, the mothership turned up to say hello with a quiche, which is always a treat. She hasn't bought donuts for ages, actually. I need to mention that to her, but the quiche was lovely, and she went home with an armful of dahlias. So everybody happy all round. Now, the second part of this podcast, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you know what a cool season annual is? And can you give any examples? Now, I'm asking you this question because I have spent this week reading Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, and I've learned that she actually pronounces it Ziegler on her podcast. So apologies if I've offended anybody there. As soon as I see IE, I'm like, oh, it must be pronounced E. And her book is absolutely fascinating, and I've read it cover to cover, and it's jam-packed with information. And so many things I have learned about this week that I did not have a clue about. And she is really, really hot on cool season annuals. This is like her thing, and she's written a complete book about it. And in my ignorance, I just thought annuals were annuals and biennials are biennials, and that's it. And there wasn't really any difference. There were some things like, I know, like zinnias are annuals that particularly love the heat, and they're doing really well at this time of year. And there are some annuals which kind of get going earlier on in the year, but I hadn't made the link. And Lisa Mason Ziegler is absolutely the queen about this, and she has pointed out the difference between cool season annuals and warm season annuals. And so my question is, do you know what they are? And are you growing any of them? So, at the risk of getting sued for repeating everything that is in Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, I can't do that, but I'm going to explain a couple of things, and hopefully it'll stick in my brain if I actually explain it to you. So, the cool season annuals are the plants which prefer cooler to cold temperatures. It is literally as simple as that. So these are the guys that are quite happy to stay out all winter if they're going to survive your lowest winter temperature. So if you live somewhere where your coldest winter temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, for example, then there's going to be a whole load of things that you can grow. But if your lowest temperature is -50, then you're going to have some issues because most of them actually won't survive the winter at that temperature. But this explains why I found a whole load of snapdragons in a pot that were flowering away one day earlier this year. And I think I mentioned it on the podcast because I couldn't believe that I'd overwintered snaps. Well, that was the answer right there, staring me in the face. Like, these guys will overwinter because they can survive the lowest winter temperatures that I have on the plot. Now, admittedly, the guys were in a container, so that probably would have helped them anyway. But the point is, it doesn't get that cold where I am for them to die. So it turns out that the lowest survivable temperature for snapdragons is -18 degrees centigrade. Well, I don't think in my lifetime we've ever got down to -18. We did have -10 a couple of years ago, and everybody's pittosporums and hebes in the whole country died in all the wholesalers' gardens, side of the road, you name it. And it was impossible to actually be able to restock because we lost everything. But the point was, there are quite a few of these annuals which will survive our UK winters. Well, certainly down south anyway, let me put that in, which is where I am. So things like foxgloves, which will survive down to -23, which is, of course, how they manage to complete their life cycle, because the plant grows in year 1 and then it flowers in year 2. And of course, there is a winter in between year 1 and 2. So they all survive the winter. So I don't know why my brain just did not get this concept or understand it. Really, there we go. Snaps down to -18. Cornflowers or bachelor buttons down to -18. My little yellow golf balls on sticks, Craspedia, -12. Orlia, -20. Ami, -12. Larkspur, -18. Nigella, -18. You get the picture. And the list also includes scabious, achillea, statice, stocks, which is Mathiola, straw flowers, helichrysum, and sweet peas. So statice and stocks are probably the only iffy ones. They're like -7. But I don't know, our winters aren't really that cold statistically, apart from the -10 one. They just don't get that cold anymore. And so the trick is to sow them right now. In fact, I'm probably late already on that one. But to sow them in August, plant them out 6 to 8 weeks before the first frost. Now, that is a variable that is a little bit dicey to work out at the moment, because for years and years, I think it would have been like late October, November time. Last year, we had a frost in September, first or second week in September, which wiped out all of my tomatoes just as they were flowering. So a little bit of unpredictability there. But essentially, if you get them in the ground in the autumn, they go to sleep over the winter. So they'll go dormant when the cold conditions come in. But they're going to wake up earlier than you will realize. And all the activity is going to be below the ground. So there probably won't be anything to see on the surface at all. But all the roots are going to start waking up and growing. before you notice any changes above the soil. And so they're just going to have like a massive head start on anything that's planted in the spring, and be a lot more robust because they've been in the ground 6 months before anything even happens anyway, which should mean that they start to flower earlier, which is amazing. And so I am, amidst everything else that I'm thinking about, I am planning to start sowing some cool season annuals now. And I ordered a whole bunch the other day, which have just arrived. So I'm going to give that a go. Now, one of the things I have had to research this week is whether or not I need a heat mat to get these seedlings to germinate. And I think the answer at the moment seems to be no, because of our general ambient temperatures at the moment. But I think if you were sowing the seeds in the winter, you would need a heat mat to get them to germinate. Now, mostly the germination temperatures are given on the back of the packets anyway, or you can find it online. But there are two really crucial things here that I need to make sure I have got sorted. The first one I definitely have, and that is that good drainage is absolutely crucial, because it sounds like poor drainage and roots sitting in really, really wet soil or frozen icy water, they're going to die. So unless you've got good drainage, that's going to be a problem. So I'll just make a note of that. And the plot is on a slope, but there are certain areas that, not that they've been terraced, but they're just a bit more level than other bits. But overall, I think the drainage is very good, because I don't have a very deep soil anyways, like 40 to 50 centimeters deep anyway. And then we're on this kind of chalk layer. So there isn't anything heavy that the water is just going to sit on. And the second thing that is really, really crucial, and I will have to work very hard on this one, is to make sure that I get them in the right time frame, so 6 to 8 weeks before the first frost. But if I don't, and I plant them in the winter or early spring, then the beds have got to be prepared and ready for the little seedlings to go in. So the ground needs to be prepped now while it is warm and easy to handle. But then if I don't put any seedlings into it, the ground needs to be covered in some way so that it doesn't just freeze, and then planting in the winter or early spring becomes impossible. So I do remember over the last few winters up at the chickens, the ground does get very cold up there because it is a field and it's all exposed and there's not a lot of protection. And so it did freeze, so I'm going to have to make sure, parts of it did, I'm going to have to make sure that I've got protection on those areas. And I'm thinking things like a really nice thick layer of bark mulch put down would do the job, because it still keeps the cold off the soil. So I hope you found that interesting. I must say, I found it like the most incredible news this week. Really, really helpful. And a real game changer, because I have been listening to podcasts where people are talking about, oh yeah, sowing their sweet peas in the autumn. And I thought, I just didn't want to have to look after them, because I thought they meant sow them in a greenhouse and just leave them in their greenhouse all winter. I don't have a huge greenhouse at all. It's like a tiny one that you'd have outside your house. So I'm thinking, well, how am I going to put like 500 sweet peas in there and then be watering them all the time and caring for them, and doing that for 6 months? I'd rather just do them in the spring and get them going, which is what I did this year, and I had a fantastic crop and no issues whatsoever. So I thought, well, I don't understand this whole starting everything in the autumn business, but now I completely understand it. So I am going to get on with that, and I will let you know how I get on. So that is everything that I wanted to talk to you about today, and I very much hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And I hope you have actually managed to listen to this episode, because when the mothership turned up, the first thing she said when she got out of the car was, "You haven't done an episode. Where's Friday's episode? I was looking for it. I want to listen to it." So I'm sure it's not going to upend anybody's life whatsoever if the episode launches today rather than yesterday. And I very much hope that you enjoy it, and that you will come back and join me on Tuesday for the next episode. All right, have a wonderful weekend. All the very best, and catch you next week.